Welcome back. Today we are taking a look at Chapter 9, Section number 2, which is a continuation of Section 1, which talked about the peopling of the Americas and how the migration patterns went. Today we're going to settle in a region called Mesoamerica and talk about some of the early groups that inhabited that region, starting with the Olmec. Now, to really understand Mesoamerica, we want to go over the fact that it's the general area from central Mexico down to northern Honduras. This region was home to the first complex societies of the Americas that arose about 3,000 years ago. The Olmec were the first known civilization builders in the Americas, and they're also known as Mesoamerica's mother culture. This is a culture that comes into an area first, develops strong civilization, and then expands that ideology through trade and through cultural diffusion to other civilizations and, of course, later civilizations. So let's take a look at the map real quick. This is Mexico. This, of course, is the Gulf of Mexico. This is the Yucatan Peninsula here. So these red border lines are the top northern part of Mesoamerica and the southern portion of Mesoamerica here. This area here in the yellowish orange, this is the Olmec homeland. We're going to talk about them right now. And then the Zapotec, which we'll talk later on in the lesson, is from this valley called the Oaxaca Valley here. Okay, let's talk about the rise of Olmec civilization. It came into play about 1200 BC, and it thrived or was most prosperous between 800 and 400 BC. They generally lived where I showed you along the Gulf Coast of Mexico near the modern-day cities or regions of Veracruz and Tabasco. If you're wanting further reference, that is in your textbook. It's on page 241. Capital D talks about the geographic elements and the environment of this region. It's extremely hot, humid, swampy, and it's generally covered with jungle. The heavy jungle covering reduces sunlight, and therefore heavy rainfall could create flooding. The advantages of this region include deposits of salt, tar, clay, which the Olmec used for pottery, wood or timber from the jungle region, and of course rubber. This comes from trees. The northern areas provided stone, in which the Olmec would utilize for tools and monuments. And then the floodplains in this region provided fertile farmland. Next is capital letter E. The Olmec society, which was from San Lorenzo, arose around 1150 BC, and archaeologists discovered earthen mounds, courtyards, and pyramids there. Olmec created large stone monuments, including columns, altars, and large sculpted heads that could weigh up to 44 tons. Now, these would be have to be moved by large log rollers. Let's take a look at an example of one of these large Olmec heads. Here's one right here on this page. Now, these Olmec heads were actually designed to be monuments of the famous ball players of an ancient Mesoamerican ball game called Poctatok. So you can see that this Olmec head is a ball player that's wearing a helmet. We'll talk more about the ball game as we get into later civilizations and cultures, but this was an example of an Olmec ball player and these large monumental heads. Now, there's a city called Laventa, which arose around 900 BC, again on the date. Researchers there discovered a 100-foot-high mound of earthen clay. These earthen mounds are basically large hills that are man-made. If you ever go sledding on a man-made sledding hill, that's exactly what I'm talking about. These man-made hills that are used as burial chambers, but also as temples, sometimes displayed on the top. Olmecs would pray to a variety of nature gods. The Olmecs, like the Aztec and Mayan civilizations, also had a fascination with the jaguar. Now, the jaguar was the most fierce wild beast in Mesoamerica. Next is trade and commerce. The Olmec are believed to be part of a prosperous trading network that went throughout Mesoamerica. The decline of the Olmec, because they're a BC era civilization, we don't know everything about them, but we think that there's some evidence that suggests outside invasion caused destruction at San Lorenzo on Laventa, which would have most likely led to a decline or a massive migration away. Roman numeral 2 talks about the Zapotec civilization, which I showed you on the map being a little bit southwest of the Olmec in what is called the Oaxaca Valley today. This valley has very fertile soil, a mild climate, and sufficient rainfall. By 1000 BC, the city of San Jose Mogote emerged as a major permanent settlement. By 500 BC, the Zapotec had developed a system of writing and a calendar system. So two major elements, record keeping, were discovered here at San Jose Mogote, which further exemplifies the fact that the Zapotec were a growing civilization. Now, the city of Monte Alban is classified as the first true urban center of the Americas, and it was home to a population of between 15,000 and 25,000 by 200 BC. That is a pretty major epicenter of population at that time period, especially in the Americas. Point number one is that from AD 250 to 700, Monte Alban added towering stone pyramids, temples, and palaces. The Zapotec culture went into decline sometime after 600 BC, and for reasons that we are still investigating through archaeological studies. Roman numeral 3 is going to talk about the early Mesoamerican legacy. The Olmec basically left their mark by becoming the mother culture and giving rise to the Mayan peoples, and then the Toltec, and then eventually the Aztec people. So they're a mother culture. That's really one thing that you want to remember about the Olmec. For the Zapotec, you want to remember that they are America's, or the America's, first true city builders, Monte Alban being the first urban center of the Americas. There's one more picture that I want to show you from the textbook, which is of Monte Alban. This is what Monte Alban, some of the ruins, look like today. You can visit them in the Oaxaca Valley, and they have tours that you can go and see these exhibits and some of the steps of these pyramid-like structures.